Hello BookTube, welcome back to my 2026 library tour. In this episode, a continuation of the science fiction and fantasy part of my library. Over the last year, I have committed to significantly downsizing my science fiction and fantasy collection as I'm really no longer in love with the genre, despite the fact that for a very long time, science fiction and fantasy was my favorite genre. This is the second box of books. When I moved my science fiction and fantasy collection to a smaller bookcase, there was a significant amount of overrun. And so a lot of the books that I pulled that I wanted to get rid of or to donate, many of those books I did gift to Famine, the eldest of the four children of the apocalypse, and then even taller, my nieces and nephews. But I still have a few, and they are in two boxes that I call the donation boxes of doom. This so this is the second of those, and has a lot more books than the first donation box of doom. So let's get started. First up is Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward. This is about a young man, I think, who must decide whether or not he wants to side with the Republic that destroyed his family and the kind of sort of, I guess, cool mentor figure they send down to keep him in line, or an emergent empire who seeks his aid to help defeat this conquering republic. I tried this novel a few years ago, and I really did not like it. It just really did not appeal to me at all. So I have had it way too long. Winter of Ice and Iron by Rachel Newmeyer. I don't know if I've ever actually tried this or not. I've had this for quite a long time and never got around to it, so I honestly think this one really should find a new home. Although by this point it might be a little too late to save it from the bridal or equivalent dumpster of doom. This is an anthology, A People's Future of the United States, edited by Victor Laval and John Joseph Adams. So this is an anthology that draws inspiration from A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, which is a fairly influential history of the United States for readers more on the left. And if I remember correctly, I think a lot of these stories are kind of written from a left-wing perspective or left-wing frame of reference. Unfortunately, what I've read of this anthology didn't really work out for me. That probably could have been because I tried it as I am falling out of love with science fiction and fantasy, so it just poor timing or what have you. So yeah, this did not quite work out for me. Next is Breath of Earth by Beth Cato. I don't know if this is the beginning of a series or not. I tried it a few years ago and didn't get on with it, which is going to be a common refrain for quite a bit of my science fiction and fantasy collection. The Ember Blade by Chris Wooding. I don't know if I've ever actually tried this one or not, but I've had it for so long and I have no interest, so it will probably find its way, hopefully, to a new home at some point. The Pale Kings by Michael Yongo. This is the second book in this. Where is this? This is the second book in a duology with Lost Gods, which is probably, excuse me, the second book in this series. I think this one is a bit more disappointing than the first book. I remember the first book I read shortly before the fall of science fiction and fantasy, and I rather liked it, but this follow-up didn't really work for me. Which is true of quite a number of sequels. That there was a period, like at the beginning of December of 2019, I read a few novels that worked for me, but then I read their sequels either later in December or into 2020 and did not work at all for me. So this is the first book in the duology, Lost Gods. So this is about, and so the Pale Kings also is about a group of assassins who are betrayed by their order. And this one, I remember rather fondly. I don't know if Michael Yongo has written anything else, though. Which is one thing that I'm although I have largely dropped out of science fiction and fantasy circles, so I don't know who all is still writing, who all has new books out or newer books out, so I don't know. Anyway, this is The Blinding Knife by Brent Weeks. It's the second book in the Lightbringer series. Since I bailed on the first book in the series, I've never gotten to this one. And fortunately, I don't think I was dumb enough to... Oh, no, I'm wrong. I actually was dumb enough. This is The Broken Eye by Brent Weeks, the third book in the Lightbringer series. So I was dumb enough to go ahead and buy this one, even though I never actually read the first one or before I did so. I do that sometimes. Okay, next batch of books. The annoying thing about this box is it has like hand holes, and it kind of comes in, and there's a tab, and the tab was in, so it was kind of difficult to get this book. So this is Hero by Perry Moore. This is a superhero novel about a young man who develops superpowers and becomes a superhero, and he happens to be gay and gets involved with a young man who may or may not be a super villain or quasi super villain. I've never really read the novel. I tried it years ago and it didn't really connect me, unfortunately. I don't know necessarily if it's just superheroes in the American superhero comic book sense don't really translate all that well to prose fiction, or just the novel didn't quite work for me. Magicians by Lev Grossman. This is the first book in the Magicians trilogy. It's about a group of young people who go to a university to study magic, um, and then end up spending a lot of their time in a Narnia inspired fantasy world. So basically, The Magicians is the love child of Donna Tartt and J.K. Rowling and C.S. Lewis, and maybe Bret Easton Ellis, too. But more Donna Tartt than Bret Easton Ellis. So I liked the first part of this novel, but I thought the focus on the Narnia XB fantasy world didn't really work. And so I would have liked more of the university stuff, more of the than I would more the university stuff than the fantasy world stuff. If this is the fourth volume of Lightbringer, I'm going to. Oh, no. This is an earlier work by Brent Weeks. It's the Night Angel trilogy. So this is the omnibus of the whole series, which, again, I don't quite know why I bought, because I did try this series before I bought this book and I didn't like it. So why did I buy the whole anthology or omnibus? I don't know. Oh. One of these days I need to really do my video on my history with science fiction and fantasy, and really do a deep dive on why I bought some of these books, even though I did not particularly care for the when I tried them. The Velocity of Revolution by Marshall Ryan Maresca. Marshall Ryan Maresca is more famous for a long series of novels set in a fantasy series called Meridian. This is a kind of a separation from that. The Meridian novels, I think, are mass market originals, although given the fall of mass market, or I don't know how exactly they're going to be published now. I don't think I've ever actually tried this. I tried one of the Thorn series of the Meridian novels and didn't like it, so I've never tried this one. Gates of Stone by Angus MacCallum. I don't know if it would have been eventually part of a series or ultimately ended up being a standalone. I don't know if Angus MacCallum has ever published anything but this. So this is a fantasy that's set roughly in what would be Southeast Asia, kind of the East Asia sort of fantasy-inspired world, and it has a number of storylines. I don't think I particularly cared for it all that much. I don't really remember a huge amount. So the next batch of books are going to be part of the War for the Rose Throne series by Peter McLean. This is Priest of Lies, which I think... So this is the sequel. This is the second book in the series. It's fairly good. So basically, the War for the Rose Throne series is basically Peaky Blinders, the fantasy edition. And it's about a young man who was in a part of a gang in his youth who was conscripted to a war. He became a priest for a war goddess, And as the war ended and he and his group are demobilized, he basically recruits them to form the nucleus of a reformed gang. And he basically spends most of his time fighting to retake his criminal empire in his hometown or his home city. And he gets recruited into intelligence service. So he also serves as something of both Thomas Selby and James Bond. So this is a sequel novel. It's pretty good, except for there's a middle part where he goes to the capital that kind of starts to drag. But yeah. This is the first book in the series, Priest of Bones. This one is good. I really liked it. I want to say there's 2 more books in the series, but I only have the third one, Priest of Gallows, which is in a different format than the other 2 because I think it took longer for the third and a possible 4th novel to come out in American edition. So this is the UK edition. And this one is really, really bad. I really hated it. Now that also could have been because at that point I was fully falling out of love with science fiction and fantasy. So the last 2 books are part of, I think, actually a trilogy. And I just have the first 2 parts. So first up is The Gutterper by Gareth Hanrahan. They're both part of the Black Iron Legacy. So it's basically a fantasy city where a group of young criminals get involved in things that are far above their comprehension. I rather liked this first volume. It came out before the fall, but I didn't get on as much with The Shadow Saints, the second book in the series. And I think Hanrahan has published more books outside of this more recently, so yeah. But anyway, that wraps up the second box. I will be back tomorrow with the other Paulon books that are on the bookcase, and then I will probably take a day or 2 off before I do the bookcase itself, which my plan is to do to film 2 rows because what I'm going to do is the top of the bookcase, and then the second and third shelves I think are double stacked or double rowed. I will do them in I'll film by rows, but I'll film them on the same day. So, and then the mass market paperbacks, which are crammed into the first shelf, I'll give myself a time limit on that to see how that works, because I don't know how long that would take. Because I think they're triple piled in there. So that's the plan. So anyway, BookTube, I will sign off for now. So thank you and have a great day.